Hello everyone, it's me, Demetrius Villa, your host and the founder of the American Rail Club. So I understand I have been gone for a little bit, and that's because of a lot of things I've been dealing with work and whatnot. But right now I am trying to get things in order here with the club, and we're doing a new schedule here. So this is what's going to be. On Wednesday, we will be starting this new series of podcasts where I'll be going out and saying what the news that we have for this week and going up for what we have from last week and going over some of the news, some of the politics, some of what's going on technology-wise in the transportation space, particularly for rail. So I wanted to bring that over for you guys so we can have something for the mornings. It'll be coming out every Wednesday at around the 10 o'clock hour so you guys can be able to have it. By the way, let me know if you like this new cap I got here. It says Make America's Railroads Great Again. So if you're on Patreon, or if you want to go to our Patreon to go ahead and support us, we have a special going on there. I believe for about 10 caps or so that we're having them on a special price. So if you support us on Patreon, there's a special level there for the Make America's Railroads Great Again caps. So if you want those, it's right over there. So we're going to go over the news of what we have. So again, here's going to be the schedule for what we're going to do for the American Rail Club as so far. So every Wednesday we will be having these podcasts at around 10 o'clock. Every Thursday around the morning hour we will go ahead and have our regular episode appear. So tomorrow we'll have an episode on Brightline. I did recently go ride Brightline while I was there for the Easter weekend. So that was pretty fun. And there's some Brightline news we are going to go over today. And then on Sunday, we will be having at 8 o'clock, we will be having our live stream. So we're going to have 3 videos every week. This one, the podcast type of version, will be just going in, putting it on YouTube. So it's going to be no editing, very quick to put out, putting out some information, and going from there. So while we're at it, I hope you guys like the new schedule. Hopefully I can be able to follow it. So I got everything set out. I've had a little bit of a break to go ahead and figure that out. So let's go ahead and begin. So I wanted to go over some news that we had. This was from last week or the week before. The congressional Democratic leaders planning to sit down with President Trump to talk about infrastructure. So here's the thing with this, that, again, the Democrats are starting their primaries very soon. In fact, Joe Biden this week is going to be making his announcement to run. So there's guerrillian Democrats now running for the nomination, and none of them are really talking about infrastructure as a big deal. So the big thing we're having in this country is that everybody likes infrastructure, apparently, but nobody really prioritizes infrastructure, and that's the problem we're reaching with that. So again, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Trump are planning to meet in the next few weeks to talk infrastructure, a sign that leaders are still hopeful about pushing a bipartisan plan, even as contentious issues like immigration and healthcare continue to divide the two parties, and they will always still continue to divide them, which means that those will always be a priority. Infrastructure will not be, even though infrastructure is very much well tied to what's going on in terms of immigration and healthcare, because the more that we can be able to have people get off the road, the healthier they'll be. Not only that, the more that we have jobs over here, the less we'll be reliant on other countries for immigration when we have our own people working on infrastructure projects. So again, this all ties in hand. It's a domino effect that once infrastructure is worked on, the other issues can also work themselves out. Now, speaking of politics, so I want to go back here in the state of Indiana and an update on the Hoosier State passenger rail service, because this has been a pressing issue for me now that I'm living in the state of Indiana. And apparently this House and the Senate for Indiana did not approve any new funding for the Hoosier State. So as of June 30th, the Hoosier State Amtrak line between Chicago to Indianapolis, and again that's connecting also Crawfordsville, Lafayette, Rensselaer, Dyer, between Indianapolis and Chicago. So all those communities in between are going to lose the last vestige they have of any passenger rail service, no matter if it's Amtrak or not. They're not going to have any rail service whatsoever. And this has been a service that's been choked out of its existence for the longest of time in the state. And I do want to bring up a couple of things over here, because there are some things, again, it does say that we have a priority issue in the United States. It's not a funding issue. We have enough money to go around to fix up the United States. What we don't have is the priority to actually put the money to use for what really needs to happen. So let me just over here quote, since 1850, Indianapolis had daily passenger rail service to Chicago. Indeed, in 1958, there were 3 companies operating 8 trains per day round trip. Currently, the state-funded Hoosier State Amtrak line will cease on June 30th, absent a continuation of state support. The 4-day-a-week train services, Crawfordsville, Lafayette, Rensselaer, and Dyer between Indianapolis and Chicago, the 3-day-a-week Cardinal service, which is funded by Amtrak, is unaffected. Here's the other thing that really got to me. Certainly a state that can subsidize a Delta flight to Paris. Again, so this is a direct flight that they're funding between Indianapolis to Paris, France, that most Hoosiers aren't going to be taking, because, you know, who's going to have the money to go to Paris? And if you're going to Paris, good luck. And then $850 million for the basketball team, the Pacers. So again, certainly a state that can subsidize a Delta flight to Paris, and $850 million for basketball team can support passenger rail, continued Malcolm. The state also subsidized a United nonstop flight to San Francisco recently. Think how many more Hoosiers travel to Chicago, not to mention the Chicago visitors to Indy. So what's going on here is that, you know, $3 million is all that Amtrak is asking for to already fund their dying passenger rail service, because they can't get enough rides daily. If they had a daily ride between Chicago and Indianapolis, there'd be a lot more people going on to there. But since the state has defunded it so much, you know, it's gotten to the point that, oh, now $3 million is way too expensive. You know, we can't fund $3 million for the train, but yet $850 million for a basketball team, that's more than fine. So again, it's a major issue that we have is with funding. Because if we don't have our funding priorities set straight, you know, you can keep enjoying your 10-lane highways, your smog. You can keep enjoying being stuck in traffic all day long. We can keep enjoying 40,000 people dying each year on the highway. That's more than the total gun deaths per year in the United States. There is many people dying on the road than there are from gun deaths, mainly suicides by guns. I mean, you are driving a weapon on the road at this point. But, you know, again, let's go ahead and give $850 million for the Pacers, you know. So that's the problem that we're meeting with right now, is that at this point, both the Republicans and Democrats, again, conservatives, and this is the thing that I've been saying. Conservatives haven't conserved anything. Liberals haven't liberated anybody, especially modern-day conservatives and liberals. We are stuck in this cycle where money is just going around. And again, here let's talk about this here. So when it comes to infrastructure, a lot of people are saying, you know, let's have a gas tax or increase the federal gas tax in order to fund these infrastructure projects. And this is pretty split down the middle. There's not really bipartisan support for an increase in the gas tax, because even you have Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, she's saying that instead of raising the gas tax, because again, the gas tax affects most middle class and most poor Americans, she said she'd rather tax multimillionaires. So the thing is that, you know, nobody wants to be taxed, and quite frankly, we're being taxed enough already. Not to quote the Tea Party, but it is true that, you know, we're giving billions of dollars. Again, look, $850 million for the Pacers. You know, when Amtrak is asking for $3 million, that's not even 1% of that. that could be to be given? Do the Pacers really need $850 million? Can they settle with 840? Can we give 10 million for Amtrak to run the service maybe daily? Would that be better? But no, this is what we want to think about and say, oh, it's better that way. So the other thing is that some lawmakers want to evolve the gas tax to a vehicle's miles traveled fee, which has been piloted in several states. But the problem is that experts say it couldn't be implemented fast enough to pay for any meaningful infrastructure upgrades in the near term. That's the problem. The more taxes you go ahead and introduce, the more money that the states or federal government get, and the more they waste that money. Okay, let's be honest. Because we're giving billions of dollars to other countries outside the United States that shouldn't be getting it. And this has been repeated very recently by many other politicians, both on the left and on the right, that we're giving billions of dollars to other countries while our own country can't even solve its own problems. Again, there's a mess up of priorities that we're dealing with on a daily basis, and there's no way that you can go ahead and prove that, giving billions of dollars to another country is going to help our own infrastructure or our own country's priorities. Because it just doesn't. It hasn't for the last several years. The real unemployment rate is somewhere around 25%. It's even worse for millennials because now millennials are dealing with rising college rates that have inflated some ridiculous amounts. Some articles I read 7,000% of inflation rate, and even Harvard has enough money in their endowment to pay. They have billions of dollars in their endowment to go ahead and pay for 120 years of all the students that come into Harvard. That's insane. But yet again, we give billions of dollars to universities every year. So it's a problem that we're dealing with. But there's a change in this generation, especially the millennials and Generation Z, which some people like to call the Zoomers, that we're really changing the way we want to get around this country. So here's a new survey from the Navy Federal Credit Union that found that 42% of Americans would consider going carless. Now, 42% of Americans, that's a very big amount. It's a good majority of them. And the same can be said for 60% of Generation Z and Millennials. So again, 60% of the younger generation, Generation Z and Millennials, would rather not take a car. They would want an option to go carless. And the other thing is that the survey also found that 1 in 4 people, that's again all generations, use a ride-sharing service at least monthly. So what does this mean? It means that people don't want to be buying cars all the time. People don't want to be driving their car all the time. They want to be finding a different way to get around. Now, which way would that have to be get around? Well, the best way to do it is by train. Again, we go to other countries and other cities. We go to Tokyo in Japan. We go to Beijing. We go to Berlin. We go to even Paris, France. We go to anywhere around the world, any world-class city and country that have these systems. And we can see that people are not only healthier, people are happier, and people can be able to get around much quicker than they'd be able to get around over here. Even in New York, okay, again, this just goes ahead to prove that hiring your taxes is not going to fix anything. We can hire the tax as much as we want. Again, the money is going to be wasted, completely wasted. Look at New York. New York is taxing citizens there much more than most other municipalities in the United States. People are leaving in droves. People are escaping New York, because they're not even leaving. They're escaping New York. They're going to places like Florida, which again, Florida is building Brightline, which I will talk about in a little bit. They're going to places like Texas, where these two states, Florida and Texas, don't have a state income tax, yet they do have enough to go ahead and fund many of the projects. Florida has been able to push for the bond approvals for Brightline. There should be a lot more getting done over, especially in South Florida. But again, it's a start, and it's a lot better than what New York is doing. You have the subway there that has been dying to have more funding, has been dying to have a lot more done for it, but the state of New York and New York City would rather spend money on other frivolous garbage rather than spending it on infrastructure. And speaking of garbage, San Francisco is being completely covered in excrement. Okay, there's even maps out there that have shown San Francisco, all the poop maps as they're calling them, of homelessness, of how the homeless people are just crapping on the streets. Because why? Because there's a massive amount of rampant homelessness problem that you have in San Francisco. And in fact, all along the West Coast, in Seattle all the way to San Francisco, and even Los Angeles, there's a lot of people that are homeless because, again, these are a lot of more left-wing cities that have a higher tax rate than most other municipalities. And again, they're not spending it in the correct order. So it doesn't matter if you're conservatives here, again, here in Indiana, a very red state, we're spending money on completely frivolous, I don't know how you even say it, because again, $850 million for the Pacers. It makes no sense when anybody, to go and think about it. But again, the thing that we need to fix up here is that we need to be more involved in this. Okay, we need to get out there. We need to make our voices heard, and we need to, by some sense, the American Rail Club and other associations that have to deal with rail, we need to step up our game on the media front, which I probably we're number one when it comes to how many people we have to reach on social media, especially on YouTube. I mean, there's no other association or rail club out there that can say that we've reached 2 million people. Close to 2 million people in total for total views. And the amount of views that we get on some of our more recent videos have been reaching over 100,000 very easily. So there's more that I'm going to be doing on that. In fact, one of the next ones I'll be doing is probably going to be the next 100,000 100K video. Now let's talk a little bit about Brightline here, and let's end it on a good note, on a bright note. We can't be saying Brightline anymore because it is Virgin Trains USA, and I was there recently at Miami Central, now Virgin Miami Central Station, and they are changing up a lot of the signage. So now it is Virgin Miami Central on the front. I will be putting links to that as well. Again, this video has a lot less editing. We're just putting it out there until we can start getting it processed, that we can be able to put that. And then tomorrow morning there will be a new video out on Brightline and what's going on with there. So reading this from the Miami Herald, the headline is Virgin Trains finally set to launch construction of West Palm Beach to Orlando link. So they were able to go ahead and sell the $1.75 billion in bonds they got from the Florida Department of Development, the financial, the FDFC. So they will be able to now run those trains. Because again, this is the big money maker. Once they get from Miami to Orlando, that's when the project is really going to boom. And there are more people now going between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. We've been seeing that a lot more often. In fact, when I was there, I've seen more people on there. So the fact that, there was an article the other day that was saying that, the trains are looking more empty. Your Brightline is a little bit more empty. That's false. That's completely false. Again, there's another article on the Miami Herald, surprisingly, that says more people rode Virgin Brightline's trains in March. Our 2019's goals now in reach. That's their headline. So if you look in the actual Brightline reports, Virgin Trains reports, that on March, the ridership had increased 17% over February to 91,903 passengers, with revenue increasing 21%. So it's showing that even within just the region of South Florida, Brightline is showing itself to be a lucrative investment in the region, because now more people are starting to use Brightline. More people are starting to go between these three cities. Again, these are right in the city centers. When you arrive on Virgin Trains right in Miami, you are right in the middle of Miami. You could be able to go walk down, go on the People Mover or go on the Metro line and go wherever it is that you need to around the city. Very easy. Again, well, not the whole entire county, but again, just the city alone. I mean, you can go to Brickell, you can go to Bayside, or you can go to, anywhere you need to in the area. The same thing over in Fort Lauderdale. It takes you right in the city center in Fort Lauderdale. You're just a couple of blocks away from Las Olas or any other area there in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And the same thing in West Palm Beach. Again, you're right there in the city center. So people do want to get in between these, whether it's for business or for leisure, because again, I see people, and I talk to them, they're either there for leisure, they're there with their families, and even especially on the weekdays, there's a lot of business people that are traveling in between the three cities for meetings or for work or for anything else that they're doing there. They're going around and using the system a lot more, and a lot of people have their sort of annual pass. I don't remember the correct name now, but that's what's happening. So we see this happening. There's more people now going on Brightline. And again, this is going to, once they get to Orlando, the amount of people that will be using it will be astronomical. It's already reaching, they're already reaching their goals at this point for 2019. They're set to. So, here, last year it carried 580,000 passengers. So that's more than 500,000 passengers that they were able to carry last year, and especially when in May is when they opened up their Miami service. So again, not even the complete service, but they were able to carry this amount of passengers. So imagine once they get to Orlando, they're going to be reaching millions of passengers every year, millions in revenue, and a lot more in revenue when you add in the real estate investment that they have on here. Again, they're following the models that what the Japanese have done. It's investing into not just the service, but also the real estate around where the service connects to. There's a video here which I'll put link below. Once they were opening up the Virgin trains, the Virgin Miami Central sign up in the front, Richard Branson almost got it was a very close call with the metal bar and also the cover for the sign, so he dodged out of the way before it happened. So I'll go ahead and link that over here below. But just something a little funny just to show this. He just released this yesterday on Twitter. It's been viewed more than 40,000 times. Speaking of anybody at Brightline, you guys inviting me anymore again over there? Just saying, because we get more views than anybody else when it comes to putting it out there. So just a thought. But anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Leave your comments below on what you think on some of the news over here, what you think on some of the points I get, if you agree or disagree on what we're doing. I think most people would agree that we're wasting money in the federal and state governments of where our priorities are set. To be honest, when you're looking at the state budgets, when you're looking at the federal budget, it's really not a matter of that we're not taxing enough, because we're taxing more than enough. The problem is that we're spending money on places that shouldn't be, that there should be some sort of laws out there. There probably are, but there should be a set priority list that we should not be spending any more on, let's say, priority C, when priority A and B have not been funded. Again, there should be not a penny leaving this country in terms of subsidies, when there are people that are starving on the streets, when cities don't have infrastructure that's enough. And again, people keep bringing up Flint, Michigan, but Flint, Michigan has also had this problem where their own representatives have not been able to prioritize their own infrastructure. But again, it just goes to show that everybody, from Republicans to Democrats, from left to right, have been sorely guilty of this. And this is why the country is in the state that it is right now. So that's why we're just focusing on making America's railroads great again. That's why we have the caps. Okay, because if some people would do, and I think anybody can agree, we do want to have a great country. Okay, if you don't want to have a great country, I don't know why you're here, but most people would rather live in a great country than a non-great country. So it's very simple. It's a rhetorical statement. But we want to focus as this channel to make our railroads as they were, and even better than they were. So people have the freedom and have the option to be able to get around. That's what we want to do. We want to have this option for people. We want to have it so our economy isn't limited by being, in 10-lane highways, and then you can put it 20-lane highways. It still doesn't matter because you still have induced traffic and people are still stuck. We want to change that. So now we can be able to get to work, get to our families, get to explore, and get to live in actual freedom. That's what it means. That's what having railroads mean. So again, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Again, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to share this video with others, and we will be getting other videos out there. Again, this is a more podcast type of video. We'll be having these every Wednesday. Thursday, we'll be having our regular episodes coming out, and on Sunday, we will be having our live streams where you can be able to ask questions in real time, and I'll be able to answer them. So thank you all for being a part of this great journey in the American Rail Club, and we'll see you next time.